We're glad to have you join us for Take a Break with Karen. This is a show that is intended to bring you together with your neighbors so that you can get to know them a little bit better. And if you have someone you'd like to have interviewed, please call the phone company, and I will do my best to invite them to come be on the show. This is where we ask questions, but mostly we listen, or try to. And sometimes my dog Ben joins, so we're just kind of like visitors into your home. Today, we are very, very happy to have our county commissioner, Dan Cochrane, who has been a county commissioner for 20 years?
Yep.
20
Since 2000, yes.
20 years as a county commissioner, and you have been through high and low and good and bad and frustrating and confusing, and you usually make your way through.
Yeah. Well, you have to love your county to be able to do it.
And you do.
Yeah, and I do love my county.
You
Yes,
live,
I do.
I wanted to be sure to mention to folks that you have built your retirement home at the place where you grew up.
Yeah, it was the old family camp out the Elochoman.
Duck Creek.
Duck Creek. I played in that creek when I was a kid growing up.
And walked across the fish.
Oh yeah, there was lots of fish back then, and we're starting to getting fish back right now. So I watch my grandkids play in the creek and fish and do the same thing that I did on the back porch. So I made a full circle around, by building a home back out there. I built a home right where the store used to be.
And your water is okay for the kids to play in.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that wonderful?
Oh yeah.
That isn't every place in the world.
No, but it's a nice little creek, and it's abundant in fish. I mean, in the fall of the year, we get Chinook, salmon, the call, steelhead, chum. I mean,
sometimes you just have to stand there and watch them.
And it's fun to watch them. Yes, it is. And I can reminisce on the back porch. That's why you love this county. That's why I live here. It's just, I grew up there. We were one of the last families to leave family camp.
The donut lady, she left too then.
Yes.
The donut lady, your mother Mary.
Right.
Carol.
Oh, no,
Carol. I remember her. I visited with her when we were working on this book.
Right.
When logging was logging. I brought it with me in case
my kids have that book.
I think everybody does. Yeah. But the sad part of this book is so many are gone.
That's the sad part with me, because I fell timber for 38 years, off and on.
Yeah.
I worked Crown 14 years, and Weyerhaeuser, and then I also had my own timber company, our own timber falling crew, and I did that for quite a while, and then came back and worked for some local people, and I actually, to get into the commissioner part of it, I was cutting on state lands and was kind of vocal a lot on different things. And I thought, well, you know what? I see some things here that Wahkiakum County is going to depend on in the future. And instead of me, going to the restaurants in the morning before you go to work, getting coffee, you can talk and say all you want, but till you really get active and be part of the community and actually do something. And I felt that I've done some good things for the county. Oh,
yes.
And, there's a lot of background on me being a commissioner and what I actually have done. And hopefully that, goes into the future. And we are doing some leaps and bounds with the legislature and getting the county whole and hopefully prosper into the future.
And being able to get money from the timber that the...
Absolutely. The county is so timber dependent that that has to keep going. And with our timberlands being locked up for endangered species issues, over 12,000 acres that the county has, well, we've lost a lot of that. 3,000 acres gets locked up in merlet habitat.
And that's been a long time.
And that's been since 97. And so anyway, right now we have a timber bill that we're trying to get through. It's actually a project. It's $28.4 million, and that's just a start. But it's for 3 counties, Pacific, Skamania, Wahkiakum County. And like I said, I've been after this for a long time.
Well, I remember when these small counties merged and they're working together.
Yes, we did form. We did do some legislation, and it became a unitary trust with the 3 counties. So actually, if timber land could be purchased, we could pool our money together, and you could have that, because Wahkiakum County has a lot of timber investment firms that come in and purchase the land and then they sell. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to be able to go out and purchase some land, which would be under the state guideline. And it makes it whole. And when you do that, it makes it whole, but it also keeps our heritage and our history alive. Mm-hmm. That is my goal. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have to have that. There's a reason we live here.
Right.
You know, we like our environment here. We take care of our environment. And we want that to sustain for our kids.
Well, look at how things have changed since you were a kid playing in that creek. Now the timber's locked up, and they change hands, as we've talked about before. But there's also the changing of jobs. There's so much equipment now that
It's became mechanized.
Mechanized, yes.
Yeah. Well, on me falling timber, I could kind of see what was going on there too. Because for a cutter, a shear that comes in and does the cutting itself, those eliminate about 6 to 7 cutter jobs.
Easily.
I mean, they cut that timber that fast, and they stack it, and
they bark it.
Not that, but they do stack it, and then either it's on flat ground or it's on steep ground. They can yard over, and you don't have all that movement. You actually just pick them all up at once and take them. So it cuts down the cost.
Sure.
For that.
But it cuts out some jobs.
It cuts out jobs too. And these machines right now, they got these shears that actually are like spiders.
Yeah.
And they're hydraulic legs on them. They can drop down and they can go right around a hillside. So, I mean, they can take some pretty steep ground. They're kind of limited if you have some bigger timber, which we're getting lacked now because they cut it so fast. And your timber diameter, the timber base is just, it's smaller. And they've geared the mills up for that.
It seems like some of the bigger trees are either on the state.
They're on state
easement, or private land. Mm-hmm. And when you look on the hills just go bare, but then they grow up again.
Oh, they do. I mean, it's just like a crop.
It is. It is. Which creates pretty much not really a forest, but that's okay because we still have plenty of elk and we have plenty of animals around here.
Yeah, not what we've had in the past, but there is, a few animals. What you're seeing right now in the local lowlands is a lot of those elk are looking for nutrition. So they're down in these fields, getting that. So that's why you're seeing abundance of elk in there. That's always been the case.
Well, we don't have Filzer's cows are gone, and Colleen, I think her last name is Haley. Her fields are empty. So we don't have the grazing that we've had for quite a few years, and so the elk have just moved in, and they act like it's theirs.
Well, the deal is too is elk won't go into places where cattle are at.
Oh,
they hang away from that. You won't see the elk and the cows together. You can see horses and cows,
of course,
but you will not see the cattle and those together. If you keep them in that field, those elk will stay away from that. Yeah.
What do they not like about the cow?
I really don't know, but you can just witness this. You notice where all the elk are right now. There's no cattle there.
Oh no, that's why they're there.
Over, so that's why they're there.
That's what I'm saying. There's no cows out there.
They don't hang with them. They'll hang with horses.
But they the other day I noticed down from my in the section of the Zur property that's just grass down. Anyway, they were all bedded down together in a little circle, and you watch them move, and then they're all eating together in this little circle, and then they're over here grazing in this little circle, and then I came off of SR4 the other day onto Loop Road, and they were right up against the fence, but they weren't going over the fence. They were just kind of standing around, and many of them were going on down to Hull Creek to get the very end of Hull Creek to get some water, and it was just like a bunch of kids that were playing on the playground. They go on by, hi.
Yeah.
Go on, hi. I actually try to take pictures of them and I'll talk to them and their ears perk up and they're not at all worried about us.
No, it's not that time of year.
No, it's not. They'll disappear when the time.
They actually know when you start getting a lot of activity, different colored rigs and stuff. They seem to, they get a little more wise then.
I think they recognize our cars.
They do. I think it's because I've been in the woods industry so long.
They know
the rigs that are up there. And a lot of the loggers are whites.
Yeah.
White trucks. So they're not as scared as those. But if you get a different color truck that comes in, then they're spooked pretty fast. So
they're not safe.
They don't hang around too long then.
Yeah, that's one of the issues that I think we're dealing with in the county is we've never really had. For many years, we never had any real trouble with homeless or homeless people weren't here all that much, but we are now.
We are. I noticed I get some of it once in a while because I do security also for a timber company. So I run into it. Usually most of it is on 101 through there. You'll get a lot of people that are, moving back and forth, and they find these little side spurs that they can drive up. There's no gates on, and they'll get in there. And they'll stay until I catch them or whatever, and then we have to move them on. we don't let them hang around. We just.
Well, I noticed we've had articles in the paper about services for the homeless.
Yeah, they have some of that.
With the county?
Yeah, the county. You got to be careful for some of that, though, too.
Oh, sure.
I mean, you want to help people, but there's some of these folks that they've actually kind of been kicked out of another county. We're between Pacific and Cowlitz. They go through the funding programs there, and then they come to Wahkiakum because there's not as many people tapping into that program. So they'll kind of come in and move into here, and then you get the thing where you get a lot of people moving in on one band of property. Somebody passed away or whatever, and one of the kids take it, and maybe they don't live here. But then you get a whole abundance of people coming in, and they're staying on those lands. And the problem with a lot of that, they're bordering creeks and streams.
Oh, gosh, yes.
So where is the sewage going to? There's no outlet, they take these old motorhomes or whatever, and they live in those things. And the law, you can't kick somebody out of one of those homes like that. So it makes it tough, but it's things that the county has to deal with.
Has to pick up the
yeah, because you're dealing with property rights issues. You might have a property that's next door that's paying a heck of a lot of taxes, on their home and whatever.
Oh, yes.
But yet you got this mess right here. That isn't right either.
We used to use the word squatters in Colorado.
Yeah, so we're going to have some issues, and I'm going to have to start dealing with that with our junk car ordinance, and we're going to start coming down hard on some of that stuff.
Oh, we have some in Grays River. Oh, do we ever?
Oh, absolutely. So those things, it's been too lax since the COVID, but it's going to start heating up again, and we're going to start doing some things.
Well, I think it makes some of us that live there and we invest in our property, we feel a bit uncomfortable. Like, for instance, I never used to lock my door.
Yeah.
But the past couple of years, I started locking my door when I leave, I had to go find a key to make copies because I wasn't sure I even had a key to my back door. But also because we've just had so many sudden thieves show up and go. And it maybe they just go through your barn. But what they take is valuable and has to be, and it just doesn't give you that feeling of safety.
No.
Yeah,
and we have pride in the county. We want it to stay beautiful, and it is a neat little county.
It is a neat little county.
And it's one that's pretty unique, and we like to keep it that way. It's like I say, I built a retirement home here, and I want to stay here. I'd like to. I'm not liking what I'm seeing in government, what's happening, because we get affected with that down here.
Oh, absolutely.
Our freedoms. And I can tell you right now, and our younger generation hasn't seen it yet, but we've lost so many freedoms to what we've had in the past.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
Well, even like the gates on the...
the gate issue, and, a lot of folks, I get a lot of kickback from that. But if we didn't have some of these gates the way they are, you wouldn't have the game that you have. You would have so much vandalism. You would be surprised how much garbage I pick up.
Well, when I first moved here, I don't know if it was you or who it was that gave me a ride. Could have been Mark, Mark Lindquist. We were going up the old Deep River, where the tunnel, the main line, and we got to where there was just barely enough room to get the truck through for some reason. And I looked down and I said, oh my God, there's refrigerators and computers. I could not believe the garbage at the bottom of the ravine that the fish come through. And I said, what's going to happen about this, Mark? He was county commissioner at that time. And he said, well, we can report it to DNR or whoever, but doesn't mean anybody's going to take it out.
Right. And well, these timber companies are pretty active right now. Like if I see it, I'll get some guys to help me and we'll clean it up and then we take it to the dump. But that's part of my job too, is clean up.
Because that is an awful thing, awful sight to see when you're used to that.
But we have to pick it up because if you let it go, it just still keeps accumulating.
Oh, yes.
And then it'll go over to some other little place, and then they'll start dumping more. And it's too bad. And I understand what they deal with the gates. When I was raised here, you didn't have any of these gates. You could wander these lands and you could do a lot. There's some back places that right now
from east to west you could travel a long way.
And go fishing and do some things, and those days are gone now. And it is kind of sad because we used to go out. I used to take my family when they were young and the night logging, because Crown Zellerbach did a lot of night logging around here, and that was pretty fascinating. And I also did that too because when I first started in the woods, I worked a night shift and I moved the light plants and helped the hook tender.
Was that straight out of high school?
Yeah, it was.
Bob Torper was here this morning, and he was talking about, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good life. I mean, I did take some college classes, different things, but I loved the outside. It's just it was a good life. I loved timber falling when the trees were bigger. It was, there was a skill to it.
Yeah,
I'm not saying there's not a skill, but right now it's you're just tripping trees, and they're smaller trees.
They're smaller trees.
Yeah, when I was cutting, there were big trees, and we had to buck them. So everything was laid out on a hillside. You bucked it. You actually manufactured the log. Now it's all processed at the landing when it's taken in. A processor does all
the little processor thing, and he bends this way, like the what you call it, like a big crab or something. Yeah. And that to me is, I first saw that when I went up into the woods with Jerry DeBry before this book. This book is 10 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like old, but
no, and you turn the pages and that one's gone and that one's gone. I'm glad we did this book and caught so many of the old timers.
I miss a lot of these old guys. I mean, I was just downstairs at the Archive Center and I was looking back through, and here I seen a picture of Hooley Souvenir, Joe Souvenir.
Yeah.
And I worked with Hooley, and I could tell you stories on that guy, and because I was a young guy. I was a young guy on the crew, and the last 2 years of Crown, I got to be the bullbuck. So I was the head of all the cutters. And it was, there was a lot of resentment a lot of times because I was young. And these guys were older guys.
But they taught you.
They did. I mean, I learned from a lot of them. And that's what was nice about Crown, because you didn't work for just one person. You worked with maybe 2 or 3 different ones. I worked with my dad. My dad was a timber faller too. And I worked with him, I think it was 6 months. He broke me in, started to break me in, but I knew a lot about cutting before that. Yeah. But that was 6 months of hell. I mean, we hardly ever talked. My dad was very strict. If I made a mistake, he would tell you, but he'd also let everybody else know about it. So it was
humiliating too.
Well, it can be, but that's kind of the way he was. But he knew his stuff.
But if you got better, did he also say, "Oh yeah, now you're getting it"?
Yeah, right? Because it was real funny when Crown he went to filing, and then they got laid, or a bunch of them got laid back off. Well, my dad had over 30 years in. Well, they had to bump back to the cutting crew. Well, they had to be trained again.
Oh God!
Well, guess who his trainer was?
Not you.
It was me. So I got to break my dad. And I look at him and I started laughing, and I says, "You remember how you treated me?" He just kind of looked at me, shook his head, But that's the way it was, It was neat. No, he was a.
There's so much of those. It's like the farming community, where the kids have decided to stay with the farm, which is not all that common anymore. Like the Burkhalters are still doing the land.
Yeah, they are.
And it's. But to hear about the old guys and the young guys, I just love that, because that's how we learned, all of us, And I myself, of course, miss my neighbor Howard Nelson, every day.
Yeah.
I can hear.
I worked with Howard when he was when I first started. He was a truck driver.
Well, I'll tell you how I can hear him in my head. He used to make this comment, and the saying is, "Get another aspirin, Jeanette." And Howard would say that to me. He's like, "Oh, I just don't feel. Get another aspirin, Jeanette." And I said, "Who is Jeanette?" Oh, like, okay. And then Bob's was his first wife, and Arlene, his widow, said his first wife wasn't named Jeanette, it was Pat.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of humor, that these old boys, and that's, to my mind, that's what kept them going.
Yeah.
It was the fact that we worked, similar to the military, we don't leave our guys behind, Men got hurt. And sometimes, they didn't make it, that they waited for the train to come by.
Yeah.
And I remember several stories that I learned working on that book about, like Bill Warren fell when he was high. And
I worked with Bill, too.
He was hanging by a rope, and he'd broken his ankle or whatever, and he climbed up that rope, and he made it back to the top. While he's got pain, and then he made it down the tree, and he waited for the train. Mm-hmm. And he said, waiting for that train was one of the roughest things I ever went through. He said, I didn't know if all the blood was coming out or not.
Yeah.
And to think about seriously hurt. Your leg might be needing to be amputated or whatever, or you lose a couple fingers. And hard life, and there was no insurance.
Yeah.
The company didn't care. Back when you were a kid, I mean, you may have had health insurance by then, your parents, but not 150 years ago, and they didn't have chainsaws either, so.
No, there were electric saws. I remember my dad was running electric saws, in the early 60s and late 50s.
But they were
electric
heavy.
Saws, all heavy, really home lights. Even the steel when it came out, the old 51, that was a heavy saw. And, we packed that thing around. I cut with a 2100, the old 76, 090s. Those big ones,
God.
50, 60-inch bars on them.
Huge.
Yeah, you pack those around. I mean, when I first came on, I remember Billy Warren, not Billy Warren, but, I can't remember the other cutter. But anyway, I watched him one time, and he picks up this saw with a 60-inch bar on it. And there was about a 12-foot fir. It was in Brookfield. And he picks it up, gets it started, and then they bring it up, and then they get on a springboard, and they come on around. But, yeah, I did a little bit of that too on springboards. Yeah, I don't see those springboards down there.
I never for the life of me can figure out how you get to the first springboard.
Well, you could stage them when you put your springboards up.
So that there's a lower
But
one.
you noticed on the springboards they have a lip on it. Well, you could take that lip when you stuck it in there. You could take your foot and you could kick it. You could work your way around that tree. You had another one, you jump on it and you work your way around
that
it.
tree.
I can remember there on the.
That's a project for a large tree.
Yeah, I remember being on one time in the 640 there in Eaton Valley, and we were cutting a big cedar. In fact, I was working with my dad, and I climbed out on the springboard on the one end, and I come back out around it, brand new saw, and I come back around and got just almost where I had it cut off. The tree, a cedar kind of stretches out like this,
right.
But they have where they'll get a kind of a bind in it when you cut it, and they'll hang you a lot of times, because of the pressure. Well, it buckled. And when it buckled, it actually came down through. I'm on a springboard. I'm about 16 feet in the air where it's sticking over the edge.
Oh my goodness!
And this thing's coming down, the whole root system where it buckled and it was just coming down through the face because I had almost of it cut off except for this piece up here. I jump off of that thing, and then when it come down, it grabbed that whole stump and it spun it.
Oh!
The only thing we got out of that saw was part of a handlebar. It buried the rest of it.
Really?
Brand new saw, first day I got it used. I'll never forget that, but that was scary. I mean, I was up on that springboard. I jumped off of it and got off of it, and it took that whole stump down.
So they were still using. So what time was it? What year was it when you started cutting?
I started cutting in 73.
Okay, 73.
Yeah.
Okay, so they were still using springboards and.
Oh yeah, you had.
Because the trees were.
We had bigger trees too.
Yeah, bigger trees, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I cut some stuff here on Del Creek, 16-foot cedars. I mean, that was uncommon. And then when I went contracting, I went up north, and we were cutting spruce up there, 15, 16 feet through. And they were taking those, and we were splitting them, and they were taking powder, and they were a D8 cat, with a big, on their blade, they'd had a sharp blade, a blade on it, and they would split those, or they'd powder them and blow them apart and put them on low boys. So, I mean, they were pretty good sized timber. That was a transition, and then, I think it was early 2000 when they stopped. You couldn't cut any more ore growth, here in the state.
Well, I know what is it called? Is it Ellsworth Creek that the land trust has? Well, that's a big piece. Yeah. That's a lot of land, and there's some big cedar stumps up there.
Well, I cut just beside of that on just above behind where the refuge is right there.
Yes.
Okay, we cut that through there, and that was all cedar. That was all big cedar.
Oh my goodness!
Also worked on Long Island. We cut cedar there until.
Oh, those are nice trees there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen the good stuff.
I seen the big stuff. Did the big stuff.
Yeah, that's why I always think of you as the witness to the transition for logging. It was natural.
There was a big transition.
That
I lived through.
Yeah,
and I think that's what got to me to running for commissioner.
Yeah.
I could see things changing, but maybe I could change it, for the county, and I think I have. I mean, you don't have to believe what I say. Just go back and look.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing it. I got a few more years to get it done.
Yep.
And I can walk away and
our futures are changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your kids and your grandkids.
Yeah.
How many kids and grandkids do you have?
Well, I adopted 12.
You
And we had
adopted
two.
12.
So we had 2 natural kids. So I did have a lot of kids.
14, and how many grandkids? You can't even count them.
It's just they're just it seemed like every other month.
But it wasn't your wife that had all those children.
No, it was not. I would never put my wife for all that. No.
You fostered children.
They were foster adopt.
And some of them you adopted. Most of them you adopted.
Yeah. We adopted 12.
And that leaves a huge legacy for the future. Just every day you get up, man, you're doing something for the future.
Trying.
You may be cutting down trees you'd rather not be cutting down, but one thing I've learned to love about loggers is I just love looking at trees.
I do too.
Somebody said that, and it just has always stayed with me. I just love, and you cut them down every day, but you love them and you take care of them and you honor them. And I mean, that's the good logger that I see. I mean, somebody that comes on and really cares about the forest.
Yeah.
Cares about those trees.
It's just like a lot of the properties that are on here. We're trying to get the fish back. Okay.
Right.
You got alders growing around these streams and stuff.
Streams.
You need to eliminate those alders. You need to come back with like a spruce or a pine type tree. That's something that's going to stay there. A conifer, because your alders the lifespan of that is about 60 years old. And the problem is, when it starts to deteriorate, it just comes down.
And it'll fall in the stream, and it's not what we want in the stream.
No. I got that issue at mine. I'm working with our silviculture person to go in there and take that down, get a permit. I'll even cut it down, and I've been putting spruce trees back in.
Yeah.
It's not my RMZ, but I'm want to get this back. I got the okay from the timber company. I knew, based on
Well, people laugh at my trees on my place because you cut down a maple tree for me. I don't know if you remember. And I remember saying to Howard, I'm not doing that again. I don't want any more trees cut. And he said, well, you just give yourself 20 years. You can't believe what's going to be in your yard. So when the wind starts and the heavy storms come, and I think, well, maybe one of them falls on my house. Well,
and I've been part of that too, where you get a person that calls me and says, well, I need this tree. And you look at this and say, why did you build your house and not take that tree out? I mean, my gosh.
What were you thinking?
Yeah, it makes it kind of hard for me now. I don't have a bond to do some of that stuff. I do fall trees for the county, too.
I know you do.
They do call me and say,
you'll
hey, they
call
can't do a
trees
certain
for
tree,
just-
so I'll go do it.
You'll cut trees for anybody.
Yeah.
If you have the time. And you'll plumber. You'll be a plumber. You'll come and open up the toilet. At the Julie Butler Hanson house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We called you to open the toilet, and you said, oh, you wouldn't believe the things I pulled out of a toilet with how many kids live in there.
Oh, yeah.
And you and Paula are still married. How long have you been married?
This is 49 years. Just here the other day. The 3rd of February.
You're going to be 50
Yeah,
in a
we're
year.
going on 50 next year.
years. That is wonderful. Congratulations.
It's been a great marriage. She's quite a woman.
She is quite a woman to have that many kids, and yet she just loves to be with you.
Yeah.
You guys do well.
We do good together. Yeah.
You do. You're a good team. You have to have been to have that many children go through your
She's
own.
still building. She still watches these reality shows. Even though we built a new home, it's still not done, and probably will never ever be done, because she's always looking at adding different things. Last summer, we did wood on the inside, so I mean, it's like a log home. So we're still working on it, and it'll be one. It'll probably be.
But you got a new tractor.
It
all evens out.
I got my toy.
It all evens
when
out.
I can get time to even do that.
I know,
So.
but we people like me who've watched you for 20 years, and others too. There may be something that comes along, and we wonder who on earth could ever replace him. If anybody ran for your spot, they wouldn't have a clue as to how catch up on the timber issues that you deal with as a county.
Well, I would never leave the county in a situation like that. I plan on having somebody that kind of has the feeling of this county and has some value with it.
Yeah.
That is probably one of my worst fears is somebody that gets in there that maybe has a far left vision of the county, and it's not who we are. That's my worry.
Right.
So we got to make sure that does not happen.
Yeah. If there was ever a good example of a good old boy, you are it. You'll help your neighbor no matter what. You take good care of your kids. You have strong values for your community. You're very civic-minded, and you're kind, man. I've known you 20 years. I know. I
Well, you hope, but when you're a commissioner, you're elected official. If you get 50% of the people liking you, I guess you're pretty lucky.
Damn straight.
We all not going to agree.
That's
Just part of life itself. You have different folks that's moved into the community, they have, they've came from a different place. My vision maybe is different than somebody else's, but I'm hoping that, and I'm probably old school, but I'm liking that, how I grew up, and I like how my kids, were able to learn and stuff from this, and I think we need to keep touch with that. It's going in the wrong direction, especially with mechanical stuff, computers, and kids playing with that. They don't get out. In fact, when our grandkids come, they can't bring their little doing this texting stuff and all that kind of stuff.
They got to go walk on the fish in the
They've got to go out and they got to be outside.
Play inside.
That or they can climb in with me and we'll go out and look at the forest lands.
Oh, and how privileged are they? Think of how many kids get to ride.
Sometimes they don't like it because they don't get their little toy, but that's just the way it is.
They will later on. They will later on. I mean, I remember every trip I've made into the woods, and I don't get to go anymore because even as an employee at Bob's, I got to be on some list or got to have a sticker or something.
It's just different corporations.
Yeah. And I always want to. I love to ride in the big low boy. I like carrying big machines. And Bob took me up one time when there was pretty heavy snow up high, and he wanted to get a cat out. And so I never will forget this. I got out of what we called the killer bee, yellow tractor part or whatever, the front. And I said, "Oh, Bob, have we got anything to dig with? Here's a baby cedar. I need this in my yard." And he said, "Oh my God, don't you touch that." And I said, "What are you talking about? It's just this high." And he said, No, don't you touch any of the trees up here. He said, "I can't bring you anywhere."
Yeah, to somebody that hasn't been up there all the time, it is. It's fascinating.
I love you. I've always loved you. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.
Oh, no, I appreciate it very much. A real man of the woods. Thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate you coming and joining us here at the coffee table. And that's what we're here for, all of us to get to know more about our neighbors and visit. We may think we know our neighbors, but sometimes there's more underneath. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you will join us the next time. And if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please call the phone company, Wahkiakum West, at 465-2211 and let them know. I'll see you the next time. Enjoy yourselves. Be good to each other. Bye-bye.